This 18-year-old went missing on Sunday. He was discovered, his body was discovered on Tuesday right near his apartment. And now we are learning this was not a random attack. As a family friend, how does that make you feel?
Horrible. Horrible. This kid lost his life over a girl.
Miramar Police Department.
Yeah.
How you doing, ma'am?
I'm waiting for my sister to go over there. What happened? What happened?
I just need to speak to you over here for a second.
Oh, Lord.
Right now, there's an investigation, and I guess it's your daughter.
Yeah, that's my
Your
daughter.
daughter, her name came up. So we have to keep everybody out of the apartment.
A mother standing outside her own front door, no idea what is happening inside, no idea what her 17-year-old daughter has done. This is Miramar, Florida, and by the time that conversation is over, everything in that family's life will change forever.
Taken into custody in the murder of 18-year-old Dwight DJ Grant.
After a body was found there, Local 10's Andrew Perez is live.
For this 18-year-old from Miramar High School, and instead, officers found a body.
18 years old, a senior preparing to graduate, a kid who called his family every day just to check in. Dwight Grant, everyone called him DJ, wasn't supposed to end up here. He wasn't the type, but someone had decided otherwise. And that decision had been planned, carefully, coldly, and weeks in advance. This is the story of a high school love triangle that turned into a murder, a plan that was set in motion with a text message and a group of teenagers who thought they'd gotten away with the perfect crime. What detectives uncovered over the next 72 hours is one of the most disturbing cases ever to come out of Broward County, because what happened inside that stairwell wasn't a fight. It was never a fight, and the evidence would prove it, word by word. To understand what happened to Dwight Grant, you have to understand who he was, and the picture that emerges from the people who loved him is almost painful in how ordinary it is. Ordinary in the best possible way. DJ was 18 years old, a senior at Miramar High School in Broward County, Florida. He lived with his mother, Molin Emile, a nurse in the Memorial Healthcare System. He was the kind of kid who didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't get into fights. He spent most of his free time gaming, kept up with his schoolwork, and never left the house without telling someone where he was going and when he'd be back. His teachers noticed him. His friends trusted him. His family described him over and over with the same words: responsible, loyal, gentle.
Is this his behavior? Like, does he do it? He's a good kid?
He's a good kid. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He goes out. He has a plan. He goes out with his friends. He calls literally all of us all the time to let us know, like, what's up, how you are.
Okay. All right.
That was what officers heard over and over when they went to Miramar High School asking about DJ. Not one person had a bad word to say. Not one teacher had any disciplinary concerns. Nothing in his background suggested he would ever end up missing. Nothing suggested anyone had reason to hurt him, except for one thing that nobody in his friend group, nobody at school, nobody in his family knew about yet. A relationship, a girl, and a boy with a plan who wasn't willing to let it go. But we'll get to that, because first, you need to understand just how much the people who love DJ didn't see this coming.
Anxiety and depression. So, like, he would.
He has anxiety?
No, I have.
Okay, so he would check on you. No, does he have a girlfriend?
Not to my knowledge, no.
No? Okay.
A caring, loyal, honest person. Someone who would be there for you in a heartbeat. That's how his family described him, and now he was gone. It started on a Sunday evening, October 17th, 2021, Broward County, Florida. Molin Emile, DJ's mother, got home from work and waited for her son. He didn't come home. That wasn't unusual at first. He was 18, a senior in high school. He had friends. He had a life. But the hours ticked by. She called. No answer. She texted. Nothing. She reached out to his friends, his classmates, everyone in their circle. Nobody had seen him. DJ wasn't answering calls. He wasn't with any of his friends, and he hadn't left a message, hadn't texted anyone to say where he'd gone. For a kid who called literally all of his friends all the time just to check in, this silence was deafening. By Monday morning, the worry had become something else entirely. DJ did not show up to class, something that his teachers would later say never happened, not once. He was the kind of student who was always there, always on time, always present. His teachers noticed immediately, his friends noticed, and by Monday afternoon, his family was in full panic mode. They checked every place he might have gone. They called every person he might have been with. They drove through neighborhoods. They handed out flyers. They posted on social media. Nothing. No sightings. No tips. Nothing. Police were called. Officers went to Miramar High School, hoping someone, anyone, might have a lead.
So you haven't seen him? What's up, man? No, everything good?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you haven't spoken to him?
Nothing. Officer after officer, student after student, nobody had any information that could help, or at least nobody was coming forward yet. The search continued through Monday, through Tuesday morning. Officers canvassed the area around DJ's apartment complex near Sherman Circle North, a quiet residential neighborhood in Miramar. They knocked on doors. They reviewed whatever footage was available. They talked to neighbors. And then, around 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, the search came to a terrible end. Officers canvassing the area outside DJ's own apartment building noticed something on the sidewalk. Bloodstains scattered, leading toward the bushes alongside the building, and then, hidden in those bushes, just feet from the front entrance of the place where DJ lived, they found him. He had been there the entire time.
In a few minutes, an officer will come talk to you. Go back inside. Listen, I can't answer anything right now. I just need you to go inside the apartment and stay there till I can get somebody to come and speak to you, please.
The body had 2 fatal wounds, one to the neck and one to the chest. A knife was also found nearby, hidden in the same bushes. Officers immediately secured the perimeter and began processing the scene, but they already knew what they were looking at. This was not an accident. This was not a random act of violence. The level of concealment, the body dragged off the path and hidden, the weapon placed nearby, told a clear and terrifying story.
Listen, what did I just ask? Just give us a few minutes and somebody will come and talk to you. Just give me a few minutes. Go ahead and go inside.
DJ's family were right there, right outside. His mother, a nurse who had dedicated her career to saving lives, was being kept away from the body of her son. The officers needed to secure the scene, confirm the identity, and process the evidence before anyone could be informed of anything. But those moments, standing outside, not knowing, sensing the worst, are something no one who was there will ever forget.
Sunday.
On Sunday, he went missing Sunday.
By Wednesday, the victim's identity was officially confirmed. The body in the bushes outside the Sherman Circle North apartment complex was Dwight DJ Grant, 18 years old, Miramar High School senior, a kid who called his family every day just to check in. He had been lying there since Sunday night, and now, 4 days later, Miramar was about to learn that 3 of his classmates were responsible. News of the discovery spread through Miramar almost instantly. It's a close-knit community. People knew each other's kids, and when word got out that an 18-year-old from the high school had been found dead, brutally stabbed, tips started pouring into the Miramar Police Department almost immediately. Some of those tips came through official channels. Some were neighbors. Some were classmates too scared to come forward at school. But the single most important piece of information that would eventually crack this entire case wide open walked through the front door of police headquarters on its own. A woman came in, holding her teenage niece's phone.
Can you just give me a brief rundown? I'm so sorry.
I know I've seen on the news that they found a body over by Sherman Circle, and they keep showing the picture of the kid that goes to Miramar High, saying they can't guarantee that it's him, basically, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
But on my niece's phone, all the texts are coming through that they're her friend. There's people from school there, and they know it's him. I just came here because my niece was telling me that she had got these texts from this girl yesterday from the modeling, and she said it was the most traumatizing day of her life when she seen him yesterday, which would have been Sunday.
Yeah.
So in my mind, 1 and 1, I'm not saying she did anything, but I'm not saying I can't come here and not show you either, because she keeps saying
tells everybody in
how many people she's killed and she's in the gang.
I mean, and it could be just to be, cool or to be tough.
But you never know.
At the time, the officer sitting across from that woman had no idea that the phone she was holding and the group chat on it would end up being the key to solving the entire case. They treated it the same way they'd treat any tip. They listened, they took notes, they made a copy of the messages, and then they started pulling threads. Inside that group chat, messages from 3 teenagers pointed in one very clear direction. 3 names: 17-year-old Andre Dexter Clemens, 16-year-old Jacine Smith, and 17-year-old Christy Parisian. Within hours, officers began tracking all 3 of them down. The first name on the list, Christy Parisian.
Miramar Police Department. How you doing, ma'am?
So, right now there's an investigation. I guess it's your daughter?
Yeah, that's fine.
What we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to keep you out of the house for now.
Me?
Yes, ma'am. Nothing has to do with you, the person, but we have to keep everybody out of the apartment. So if there's anybody else in there that's in there.
No, the sister, she's at work, but no.
But nobody else is inside?
No, only 3 of
You
us.
got shoes on? Okay.
So we have detectives that are going to get a search warrant.
Okay.
So right now, we're just going to make sure nobody's inside, and then we're going to close the door.
and then we're gonna wait for the warrant to get here.
Christy's mother stood in the hallway outside her own apartment, not allowed back inside while detectives waited for a search warrant. She didn't know yet what her daughter was accused of. She didn't know yet what those officers had been told, what that group chat had contained, or what had been found in the bushes a few hundred yards away. She just stood there in the dark, in the hallway, while the world as she knew it began to fall apart.
Can I take my phone to call my sister? Is it okay? Take my phone? My phone is right there. Can I call her?
At this point, we already gave you, notice that nobody can go back inside.
Can you take my phone for me? This is right there. By the way, you see my phone right there?
We really got to follow protocol.
Officers later learned that Christy had actually left her mother a voicemail earlier that day, a message about the murder. That detail shifted the focus. They retrieved the phone and played the message. Christy was already at the station. She had been brought in for questioning. Her mother was told to stay where she was. Nobody in the family was allowed to leave.
So are you going to be around here? Are you sticking around here? Or are you leaving?
Leaving where?
You're not going anywhere, right?
No, I was going to the police station.
No, I mean right now.
I'm waiting for my sister to go to the police station because my sister Dwight.
While Christy was being questioned downtown, officers turned their attention to the second name on that list, Jacine Smith, 16 years old. They tracked her to her family's apartment complex and found her around 11 that same evening, outside, with her mother nearby. What followed was one of the most revealing conversations in the entire investigation.
Did you hurt this person? No, I didn't. I didn't hit him or anything. I was just told to push him and make sure he stayed in the corner.
I don't know exactly what happened. You're telling me that you were told to do something? I don't know what you did. I don't know what you didn't do.
She said that she was told to keep him in a corner. Andre. Okay. Andre told me that somebody had pissed him off, or somebody that was messing with somebody else's girl or something. It had to do with some type of chick. And that he was upset and that he needed some backup for his fight.
That was the story from the beginning. A fight. Andre needed backup for a fight. The whole thing was supposed to be a fight. A high school dispute over a girl. That was what Jacine told officers that night. That was what she would keep saying. But as the conversation continued, first outside, then inside a police cruiser, with Jacine and her mother sitting side by side, the real picture started to emerge through the cracks in her story.
Told me to dress up in all black and follow him.
Andre?
Yes. I want to do rag and everything. He just said, do this for me. Just help me out with a fight. We're fine. We walked all the way there. And we walked up the stairway. And Chrissy was there. Chrissy had seduced him from what I know.
There it was, hiding in plain sight. Inside what sounds like a simple explanation, Christy Parisian had lured DJ to that stairwell under the pretense of a romantic encounter. She had used his trust, his interest in her, to get him exactly where Andre needed him to be. Jacine said she was told to keep DJ cornered. Andre would confront him. It was going to be a fight. That was all anyone was supposed to do. But here's the thing about Jacine's version of events. It collapses under its own weight the moment you start paying attention to the details, because the level of preparation Jacine herself describes goes far, far beyond what you do for a fist fight.
So I'd like for you to kind of tell me step by step on how everything occurred,
Before Sunday, before he came over.
Who's he?
Andre.
Andre's from school also?
Yes. Before he ever came over, he told me Friday, I believe it was Friday, that he had a situation that he needed to deal with, and he was wondering if I could help him out with a fight. Me knowing that I used to fight in elementary and used to be a bad kid-ish outside of school, I agreed because he was a good friend of mine. Like, it's just a fight. He had said he was going to be coming over around 6. He came over at least 6:45. Close to 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And he had proceeded to tell me the whole scenario of, we're gonna get dressed in all black. You're gonna wear clothes that you don't care about. You're gonna wear gloves, you're gonna wear do-rag, I know the whole layout of the building.
Gloves, a do-rag, clothes you don't care about, specific knowledge of the building layout. This was not preparation for a fight. This was preparation for a crime. Andre had picked everything out in advance. What they would wear, what route they would take, how they would avoid the cameras. This was weeks of planning, compressed into a single Sunday evening, and Jacine had agreed to all of it.
We had gotten dressed, we had prepared. My mom had gotten home. We had told her that we were going to go on a walk. He was explaining to me that the person that me and him were going to fight with, that Chrissy was going to seduce, had messed with a girl that he knew and had, essentially from what I know. And on the way there, he's telling me exactly where we're going to walk, exactly how we're going to walk, exactly we're gonna wait for a signal. And I was like, okay, stuff funny. But immediately when we got in there, we had walked over to where the stairwell was, while he was telling me to move this way to avoid a camera and to avoid being seen. So we had walked up the stairs while Chrissy stayed downstairs and made a call.
Let that settle for a second. Avoid the camera. That phrase is key. You don't think about avoiding cameras when you're going to fight someone. You think about avoiding cameras when you're planning something you know is deeply wrong, something you need to hide. Andre knew exactly where those cameras were. He'd mapped the building, he'd planned an escape route, and Jacine, 16 years old, his close friend, had gone along with all of it.
Me and him were upstairs. He's just talking to me, we're relaxed, we're chill. And then he got a signal from Chrissy to walk downstairs, and he had a weapon with him. He told me to hold the weapon. We had gloves on at this time still. We had walked down the stairs. He had approached the boy, and Chrissy had moved back and walked down the stairs fully.
Did you know this boy or no? Okay.
Boy tried to make a run for it after Andre approached him and was like, yeah, we have a problem. He has me standing behind. Chrissy looked at me and he made a run for it, and I'm like, okay, weapons just for intimidation, I'll put this down. I ran and I helped Andre to tackle him and put him onto the ground.
Jacine uses the word weapon throughout this part of her account. She's specific and detailed about almost everything else, the clothing, the route, the timing, the signal, but she deliberately avoids naming what the weapon actually was. We already know from the crime scene that DJ was found with 2 fatal wounds, one to the chest, one to the neck. We already know a knife was found in the bushes beside the body, but the wound to his chest, that wasn't from a knife. That detail is something that doesn't come out until later in the interview. Up to this point, Jacine's story has been consistent, if incomplete. She's positioning herself as someone who was dragged into a situation she didn't fully understand, a loyal friend who agreed to help with what she thought was going to be a fight and ended up witnessing something she wasn't prepared for. It's a narrative designed to minimize her role, and for a while, it almost works. And then she says one sentence that changes everything.
Prior to this, he had told me that this was the first person he had ever killed.
Prior to this, he had told you that?
When we were at the house, when we were just talking about the whole plan of what to do, what was going to happen, but he never told me that he was going to kill somebody until at this time. Like, this is the first person. I'll leave it here. I'll ask Chrissy. I'm going to leave.
Read that again. She says Andre told her before they left the apartment, while they were still at her house going over the plan, that this would be the first person he had ever killed. She claims he only said this in the moment, but the way she frames it, talking about it as a piece of prior conversation, as something that was said during the planning discussion, directly contradicts her earlier claim that she had no idea a murder was planned. She knew. She knew before she ever put on that black hoodie, those gloves, that do-rag. She knew before she walked out the door, and she went anyway. That single slip changes Jacine Smith from a reluctant participant to someone with full knowledge of a murder conspiracy. The officer clocks it immediately and pivots.
I'm assuming it's a knife then that he had?
There is a knife. There is
a longer what?
Sword.
A sword. Okay.
A sword, not a knife, a sword. Something you cannot conceal under a jacket without people noticing. Something that requires deliberate preparation, deliberate concealment, deliberate choice. And yet here were 3 teenagers who had spent an entire evening together, walked across a neighborhood together, entered a building together, and Jacine claimed she didn't see it.
So you saw the big sword when he first showed up here in the first place?
No. I didn't see it exactly. I saw that there was a bag with it, and I was like, okay. Because somebody else had taken everything out of the house behind us, and I didn't know where that was. And I believe it was either in like a jacket with him, or with Chrissy in an extra jacket or in a bag.
Detectives weren't convinced. The gaps in her story were too large and too convenient, and what she had already said, that Andre told her it was the first person he had ever killed, made the claim that she didn't know this was a murder impossible to sustain. The picture was becoming clearer. 3 teenagers had dressed in black, armed themselves with a knife and a sword, mapped a building, timed a signal, and waited in a stairwell for an 18-year-old to walk into their trap. And that 18-year-old had walked into it because he trusted someone. Based on Jacine's account, the surveillance footage, and the physical evidence, detectives were able to reconstruct the events of October 17, 2021 in precise detail. It began with a text message. Sometime before that Sunday, Andre Clemens had reached out to Christy Parisian. The plan was already in motion. The motive was jealousy, a love triangle that had festered for weeks. Andre and Christy had apparently been in a relationship, and that relationship had ended. DJ Grant, quiet, responsible, a kid who called his friends every day, had started talking to a girl that Andre considered his ex. In Andre's mind, that was a transgression that required a response. The text messages between Andre and Christy, which investigators would later recover and present in court, laid out the plan in language that left nothing to interpretation. On October 11th, 6 days before the murder, Andre sent Christy a message that said, "Murder will definitely happen soon. It'll be bloody. Help me kill him." He also sent messages to his ex-girlfriend, telling her to get used to DJ not being around anymore. This wasn't a fight that got out of hand. This was a premeditated killing, planned almost 2 weeks in advance by a 17-year-old boy who was using his girlfriend and his closest friend as instruments. On the afternoon of Sunday, October 17th, based on Jacine's account, the surveillance footage, and the physical evidence, detectives were able to reconstruct the events of October 17th, 2021 in precise detail. It began with a text message. Sometime before that Sunday, Andre Clemens had reached out to Christy Parisian. The plan was already in motion. The motive was jealousy, a love triangle that had festered for weeks. Andre and Christy had apparently been in a relationship, and that relationship had ended. DJ Grant, quiet, responsible, a kid who called his friends every day, had started talking to a girl that Andre considered his ex. In Andre's mind, that was a transgression that required a response. The text messages between Andre and Christy, which investigators would later recover and present in court, laid out the plan in language that left nothing to interpretation.
Take out a small weapon and attempt to and he was failing, and I was just like, okay, I can see it because I'm holding his legs. So I'm in a position where I'm holding both of his legs and I'm wrapped around his under torso, and I just feel poking right here.
Jacine was holding his legs. That is not a bystander. That is not someone who was scared and froze. That is active participation in a killing. And DJ, even then, was conscious. Even then, he understood what was happening.
He had another smaller weapon, and he took that out, and he stabbed him right here. Also, the boy was just like, "You're gonna kill me. Just choke me out or like end it," because he kept going in and out.
DJ Grant knew he was dying. He was in an unimaginable amount of pain, slipping in and out of consciousness, stabbed multiple times by someone he may have seen at school just days before, and the only thing he could think to ask was for it to end quickly. Andre ignored him and stabbed him again. DJ Grant died in that stairwell, outside the building where he lived, on Sunday, October 17th, 2021. He was 18 years old. He was supposed to graduate in the spring. The 3 teenagers believed they had pulled off the perfect crime. They had planned their outfits in advance. They had mapped the building. They had identified the cameras and avoided them. They had brought the weapons in a bag so they couldn't be spotted. They had used a lure, someone DJ trusted, to get him into position. And they had chosen a location that was hidden from the street, tucked inside a stairwell, away from foot traffic. When it was over, they dragged his body into the bushes. Then they packed the weapons, the bloody clothing, and everything else into a bag and left the building the way they came in. They walked back to Jacine's apartment complex, and there, in what was perhaps the single biggest mistake they made. They tried to destroy the evidence. In an open, grassy area, clearly visible from the surrounding apartment windows, the three of them started a fire. They poured gasoline over the clothes and the other materials, and they burned them in the open. At night, with the light of the fire visible for some distance, and while they stood around that fire, shaken, hoping they were in the clear, they were being watched.
The two girls, they were just standing there, but they weren't moving much. The chubby girl, she was just like moving back and forth, like standing in the same spot but moving a little bit. And then the guy was moving around the fire, just throwing more gasoline. I didn't see their face, but I saw their body shape. And seeing them on the photos, you could picture them, especially the chubby girl. You could feel the traumatization from them, and you could feel like they were scared, but you could also feel like they had that energy of the way of thinking like he deserved it. Like you could notice that.
A security guard at the complex spotted them and interrupted the burning. Another resident had seen them from a window and later gave that account to police. The cover-up ended almost as quickly as it began, and they had made a second, equally catastrophic mistake. They had talked about it in a group chat, one that included people outside of just the three of them, and one of those people, a teenager whose aunt happened to see the messages, was already sitting in a police station lobby holding a phone. You can't get away with nothing. There are cameras everywhere. Once police had the three names from the group chat, they moved fast. Arrest warrants were secured, phones were seized, and what detectives found in those messages confirmed everything the physical evidence had already suggested. The text messages between Andre and Christy, sent 6 days before the murder on October 11th, 2021, spelled it out in terms that could not be misread or excused. Murder, blood, a direct request for help, a target named, a plan underway. And there was more. Andre had also sent messages to his ex-girlfriend, the girl at the center of the triangle, telling her that she should stop whatever she had with DJ, that she should get used to him being gone. These weren't the messages of someone who snapped in a moment of rage. These were the messages of someone who had decided, weeks in advance, that another person needed to die. Surveillance footage from the apartment complex backed up Jacine's account in the parts where she had been truthful. The cameras showed all three suspects entering the building. They showed them dressed in all black, moving in formation. They showed the aftermath, the body being carried out of the stairwell, the movement toward the bushes. Every piece of evidence pointed in the same direction. The physical evidence, the digital evidence, the eyewitness accounts, the camera footage, and the statements made by the suspects themselves. 5 days after DJ's body was found, Miramar police moved in. All three suspects were arrested. Christy Parisian, Jacine Smith, and Andre Clemens were taken into custody and charged as adults. All three faced first-degree murder with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and tampering with evidence. For the families of all three teenagers, the weeks and months that followed were devastating in different ways. DJ's family had lost a son. Christy's mother had been standing outside her own apartment that first night, asking to use her phone, not yet understanding what her daughter had done. Jacine's mother had been sitting in a police car, listening to her 16-year-old daughter describe step by step how she helped hold a boy down while he was stabbed to death.
I was trying to just pretend and forget that it didn't happen. I already knew that if something like this was going to happen, I already knew the cops were going to show up sooner or later. And I already started preparing myself for the worst, Mom. What do you mean by preparing yourself for the worst? If they send me away, Mom.
She already knew. She had already been preparing herself for this moment since Sunday night. The legal proceedings stretched over nearly 3 years. All three defendants remained in custody throughout. There were motions, hearings, continuances. Andre Clemens, at one point, attempted to represent himself in court, filing a handwritten motion challenging the wording of the indictment. Nothing changed the substance of the evidence against him. During this time, DJ's family appeared in court whenever they were asked. His mother, the nurse who hadn't been able to return to work since her son's death, sat through hearing after hearing. His aunt, Nadine Dixon, spoke about what the family had been robbed of. Not just a life, but every milestone that should have followed. Graduation, a career, a wedding.
For the first time since their son's murder in October, we're hearing from the parents of Dwight DJ Grant, the Miramar 18-year-old, who police say was killed by 3 other teens right in the stairwell of his apartment complex.
Christy Parisian's attorney would argue in court that she had no idea murder was planned, that she had been manipulated, used as a lure, without understanding the full scope of what Andre intended. The state pushed back hard, presenting hundreds of text messages as evidence of shared intent.
Evidence points to she was manipulated to being involved in this without knowing, that a murder was going to take place.
But the state, armed with hundreds of pages of text between Parisienne and Clemens, argued she knew exactly what was happening and that the teens shared a twisted, dark attraction to violence in their digital exchanges.
In this case, on October 3rd, she says, "I love your opinion and all, but it's spooky season and my toes will be red."
The judge denied Christie's bond request. All three remained in custody. On August 29, 2024, just under 3 years after the murder and 1 month before the 3rd anniversary of DJ's death, Christy Parisienne and Jacine Smith appeared before Circuit Judge Ernest Colra and changed their pleas to guilty. Both were sentenced that same day, 25 years in Florida State Prison, followed by 10 years of probation. Christy Parisienne, now 20 years old, Jacine Smith, now 19. In the courtroom that day, DJ's family spoke. His aunt Nadine Dixon said they had been robbed of his graduation, robbed of seeing him marry, robbed of every version of the future they had imagined for him. His mother, who had not returned to work as a nurse since October 2021, sat in that courtroom and watched the two young women who had helped plan her son's death walk away in handcuffs for the last time. Andre Dexter Clemens was the last to face the court. He had spent months attempting to challenge the process, filing motions, briefly representing himself. But on February 18, 2025, nearly 3.5 years after the murder, he too pleaded guilty. First-degree premeditated murder, conspiracy, tampering with evidence. Judge Colra sentenced Andre Clemens to 40 years in Florida State Prison, followed by lifetime probation. He was 20 years old. He will not be eligible for release until he is in his 60s. DJ's mother addressed the court before the sentence was read. She talked about all the things her son would never do, all the things she would never get to witness, all the good things he had done in his short life, and the memories that would stay with her now that there could be no more of them.
Loyal, honest person would be there for you in a second and a heartbeat.
Dwight DJ Grant was 18 years old when he was murdered. He was a kid who didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't cause trouble, spent his free time gaming, and called his friends every single day just to check in on them. He was supposed to graduate from Miramar High School. He was supposed to have a whole life ahead of him. Instead, he was lured into a stairwell by someone he trusted. He was ambushed by people he saw every day at school. He died in the bushes outside his own front door, and he lay there for 2 days before anyone found him. The 3 teenagers who planned and carried out his murder believed they had thought of everything: the cameras, the clothes, the route, the signal, the fire. But they hadn't thought of one thing: a group chat on a teenager's phone and an aunt paying close enough attention to bring it to the police. You can't get away with nothing. There are cameras everywhere. Christy Parisienne, Jacine Smith, Andre Clemens, all 3 are now serving long prison sentences in the state of Florida. All 3 were charged as adults. All 3 ultimately pleaded guilty. The case is closed. But for Molin Emile, the nurse who raised her son, who watched him grow up responsible and kind and full of plans, it will never be fully closed. No sentence given to 3 teenagers in a Broward County courtroom will give back what was taken from her on a Sunday evening in October 2021. DJ Grant was a good kid. He deserved better than what happened to him, and the least we can do is remember that.